Now, you know that railway line that no one seems to want or like, apart from a few high-profile politicians? Well, it's back in the news again. George Osborne has used his visit to China to launch the bidding process for building the UK's proposed high-speed 2 rail line, which goes right through some very leafy parts of Buckinghamshire. The Chancellor is urging Chinese firms to pitch for almost £12 billion worth of contracts for the first phase of the link between London, Birmingham and the north of England. Mr Osborne is very keen to get going.
So we now need to get on and build this, and we're offering today the contracts for laying the track, £11 billion of contracts, and we're saying let's have the best bids from around the world, hopefully partnering with British firms. But when you come to China, you realise the scale of the ambition here.
The chief executive of HS2, Simon Kirby, says it's not about getting China to help meet the cost of making HS2 actually happen.
The current plan is for the first phase of the programme to be funded by the taxpayer. What the Chancellor is saying today, he's saying to international competition, bring your expertise, collaborate with British industry in the UK to help us deliver new technologies that don't exist in this country. It's not about investing Chinese money in high-speed rail today.
Now, one vocal opponent of HS2 is the Conservative MP for Chesham and Amersham, Cheryl Gillan. She says it's wrong to open the bidding when Parliament hasn't yet fully backed the scheme.
It's premature because, of course, the bill hasn't finished its way even through the House of Commons. It's still in committee. And certainly, the very earliest I think it could get royal assent would be the back end of next year. I still wonder whether this really is a priority for government, considering that they've cancelled other very important projects in the north, such as the Midlands electrification.
There is some confusion over where Labour stands on High Speed 2. The party has always backed the scheme. In fact, it was an unelected Labour peer, Lord Adonis, who dreamt it up in the first place. But in the past, Leader Jeremy Corbyn has voted against the issue. Now, Labour says it would nationalise HS2 as part of a state-run railway system, a view that could concern investors. The UKIP leader, Nigel Farage, is against High Speed 2, and he doesn't trust George Osborne to get a good deal for Britain.
Complete waste of money. Once again, what the Chancellor will do is take on a Chinese company for a British infrastructure project. He'll price it at a level that is disadvantageous to Britain, and when it comes to providing jobs, I've no doubt we'll stuff it with imported workers. Doesn't make sense to me.
So, George Osborne wants China involved in HS2 and the UK's new nuclear power station. Question is, why can't we do some of these projects, infrastructure projects, ourselves? There's money in this country as well. Perhaps the potential backer just does not like the ideas as they stand. Anyway, Joe Rukin is the campaign manager for Stop HS2. Joe, very good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Roberto.
Joe, when you heard that George Osborne was talking to the Chinese about HS2, what was your reaction?
Well, we've known that this has been on the cards for a while, but what's the big surprise is that George Osborne is completely subverting the democratic process, starting the tendering process probably a year, maybe even longer, before you've actually got approval from Parliament, because obviously that's a long way off yet.
Maybe he's forgotten, Joe.
Well, cynically, and to be perfectly honest, you can't really think of, after spending so long looking at HS2, you tend to think of all of it quite cynically. It does look very much like he's trying to get to a stage where you say, well, we can't cancel it now, we signed the contracts. But the worrying thing about these contracts is just a month ago, we were led to believe that these contracts would be a total of £7 billion. It's gone up to 12 in the space of a month. And this is just for laying the track, building the viaducts, digging the tunnels. It's not for things like the signalling or building the stations or anything like that. So this clearly shows that the thing is out of control and going to be well over budget, because this almost takes up the entire budget without the contingency to start off with.
As anyone who has had any sort of work done at home, for example, will know, you start off with budget X, it ends up being X plus Y plus Z plus a bit on top as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the worst thing, I suppose, is that when you look at this, China is a perfect example of why you shouldn't get involved with high-speed rail.
Hang on. Don't they have very good high-speed efficient rail? There's a vast country of theirs.
Over the last 10 years, they spent a lot of money developing a high-speed rail network, which has been beset with massive safety problems. It's been beset with corruption. No one's turning up on the trains because they can't afford to use them. And this is the perfect example of what the problem with HS2 will be. The construction of these projects is always justified by grossly inflated passenger forecasts that never turn up. And China is a perfect example of that. That's exactly what's happened there. And obviously they built a high-speed network. They've got a country there that's the size of half a continent. We're a lot smaller. But the thing is with China is because they've built up this massive industry and they've plumbed in their own country, they've now no option but to go and try and build a high-speed rail network in other countries.
Well, look,
and it's
Joe,
worrying.
Joe, because there are concerns about the safety standards in terms of the workers and the way the whole system operates in China. We perhaps don't hear so much about it because they don't want that news getting out. But you're saying that they have this huge high-speed infrastructure, train service in China, but no one's using it because they can't afford it.
Well, yeah, and this is the thing. You only have to look at our rail networks and see that. Just look at the first-class carriages in going up and down the lines in this country, and you'll see that the premium services people can't afford. And in China, high-speed rail is very much a premium service which cannot be afforded by the masses, and they're just not getting used. They are massively in debt over their high-speed rail network. Obviously, there's been a lot of corruption as well, and a lot of it's there's bits that have had to be rebuilt because of the safety problems. Like you've had one place where there was a big embankment that simply got washed away in the rain. It was built that badly. And George Osborne really wants these people to come over and build our high-speed rail network. It's very
there is the issue of not having parliamentary approval yet, which is pretty important in a democracy. But wasn't it? He's in China. He's pitching for business. He's trying to get them to build. He's trying to get them to build nuclear power stations. He's given them a few million quid to try and develop their football skills. Wasn't it good political sense to say, look, do you want to get involved in high speed too?
Well, it depends, really. It's good political sense if you think high-speed rail HS2 is a good idea, and he's seeing this as part of his portfolio for becoming Prime Minister, possibly. But you just look, and all the opinion polls, or everything that you've seen in the past, and the massive criticism from independent bodies, and indeed within parliamentary bodies like the Public Accounts Committee, show that HS2 is not a popular idea, but it's just another one of those situations that demonstrates how detached the people running this country are from the people of this country.
But it does appear, Joe, this is a huge story with what Osborne has announced overnight on this. Is it going to be, as you said, that the case that, look, he's going to get the funding and he's going to say, look, well, we've got to get parliamentary approval. You must approve it because, look, we've signed the contracts. They've given us the cash.
Well, that's the thing. He hasn't got the funding for it because it hasn't passed through Parliament. That process hasn't completed.
But if he goes to Parliament with a cheque from the Chinese government saying here's 12 billion quid, we can start, it'll be hard to say no.
No, we're not going for funding from the Chinese. We're going to the Chinese companies for them to tender for the business. So it'd be a question of us paying them, not the other way around. There's a separate argument that they may want to get involved in the actual running of it and potentially the ownership of it, but that's not where we are today. We're just looking at the possibility that they're going to do the work. So all these, platitudes that we've had about, there'll be 25,000 jobs in construction, that's gone out of the water today because the Chinese are going to potentially be building it. And all those people up in Teesside who are protesting about the closure of their steelworks, this is a nail in the coffin for it if the rails are going to be made in China.